I don't think it's my job today to grade the Supreme Court or offer assessments of whether they're right or wrong.
I'm disappointed in that answer. You're a member of the organization now, correct?
I am currently a member, yes.
So I take it that you disagree with President Trump.
Well, Senator, again, I'm just not going to weigh in on any assessments of any organizations or individuals or anything like that. Senator, as a judicial nominee, it's not appropriate for me to comment on issues like that.
Well, I don't understand why not.
Well, Senator, you're referring to a personal political issue, and it's just not appropriate for me to weigh in on that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel where we defend constitutional principles and traditional American values without apology. Before we dive into today's important discussion, I need you to hit that like button if you believe in preserving our constitutional republic. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because we're bringing you the truth that mainstream media won't tell you. Also, folks, if you want to support our mission to keep America first in everything we do, head over to patreon.com/America First, where you can support this channel for as low as $5 a month. Your support helps us continue bringing you unfiltered analysis of the issues that matter most to our nation's future. Today we're going to analyze a judicial confirmation hearing that perfectly illustrates everything that's wrong with how Democrats approach the confirmation process. We're looking at Senator Richard Blumenthal's questioning of judicial nominee Chad Meredith, and let me tell you, this exchange reveals the radical left's playbook for attacking conservative nominees.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Mr. Meredith, I'm very interested in your active membership in the Federalist Society. You were president of University of Kentucky's Law School chapter, and as an attorney, you served on the steering committee of the Connecticut Lawyers chapter. In 2021, you declared the Federalist Society is one of my favorite organizations ever. I love everything the Federalist Society does. President Trump has a different view. Apparently, he's routinely attacked the organization, claiming that it gave him, quote, bad advice, end quote, on nominees, and calling its founder, Leonard Leo, a, quote, sleazebag, end quote. I take it you disagree with President Trump on his views on the Federalist Society.
Senator, as a judicial nominee, it's not appropriate for me to comment on issues like that.
Well, I don't understand why not.
Well, Senator, you're referring to a personal political issue, and it's just not appropriate for me to weigh in on that.
Well, the Federalist Society, so far as I know, is not a partisan political organization. You're an active member of it. I'm asking you whether you agree with President Trump on its apparent failings and flaws.
Senator, again, it's just not appropriate for me to weigh in on that.
I don't understand why you're reluctant to express a view on it. You're a proud member of the Federalist Society, correct?
Senator, I have been a member of the Federalist Society off and on since law school, and what you're referring to is our comments and issues that are just not appropriate for a judicial nominee to weigh in on.
Is that true of all the organizations that you participated in, that they're not appropriate for you to comment on?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it would. If you're asking me to make assessments of individuals and organizations, I think that would be the case. I think it's not appropriate for me to make assessments.
You're a member of the organization now, correct?
I am currently a member, yes.
So I take it that you disagree with President Trump.
Well, Senator, again, I'm just not going to weigh in on any assessments of any organizations or individuals or anything like that.
Well, let me ask you on a different topic, since you're unwilling to answer those questions. You've made it no secret about your feelings on reproductive rights throughout your career. Given your long history of advocating against reproductive freedoms and rights, can we expect you to be fair and impartial as a judge if you're confirmed?
Absolutely, Senator. My job as a judge, should I be fortunate enough to be confirmed, will be to set aside all of my personal beliefs, all my personal preferences, all my personal desires, and simply do what the law commands, to uphold the rule of law in all circumstances.
Let me ask you, do you think Brown versus Board of Education was correctly decided?
Do I think Brown versus Board of Education was correctly decided? Yes, Senator.
How about Loving versus Virginia?
Yes.
And Obergefell versus Hodges correctly decided?
Well, Senator, I'm comfortable saying that Brown and Loving are correctly decided because I think those are so deeply entrenched in our nation's judicial tradition that I think there's absolutely no legitimate chance that anyone will challenge them. For other Supreme Court decisions, I'm hesitant to make an assessment because I don't think it's my job today to grade the Supreme Court or offer assessments of whether they're right or wrong. And, it's for other precedents.
Well, I'm disappointed in that answer. I think it's unsatisfactory given that Obergefell is established and well-accepted precedent.
Let's start with what we witnessed here. Senator Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut who has his own credibility issues stemming from his false claims about serving in Vietnam, decided to launch an attack on Chad Meredith not based on his qualifications, not based on his legal expertise, but based on his membership in the Federalist Society. This is a deliberate strategy, folks, and we need to understand what's really happening here. The Federalist Society is a legal organization founded in 1982 that promotes the principles of limited government, separation of powers, and judicial restraint. These are foundational American principles, the very principles our Constitution was built upon. The organization believes judges should interpret the law as written, not create new law from the bench. This is called originalism and textualism, and it's exactly what our founders intended when they designed our judicial system. But for Democrats like Blumenthal, the Federalist Society represents everything they despise about constitutional governance. They hate the idea of judges who won't legislate from the bench. They despise the concept of judicial restraint because they've become dependent on activist judges to implement their radical agenda when they can't get it passed through the democratic process. So when Blumenthal attacks Meredith for his Federalist Society membership, he's not really attacking Meredith. He's attacking the Constitution itself. He's attacking the principle that judges should follow the law rather than their personal policy preferences. This is part of a broader pattern we've seen from Democrats who want to pack the Supreme Court, eliminate the filibuster, and fundamentally transform our judicial system because they can't win through normal democratic processes. Now let's talk about Blumenthal's specific line of attack. He tried to create a wedge between Meredith and President Trump by highlighting Trump's criticism of the Federalist Society. This is a classic divide-and-conquer strategy. Blumenthal knows that many conservatives have great respect for both Trump and the Federalist Society, so he's trying to force Meredith to choose sides. But here's what Blumenthal doesn't understand, or more likely, what he's deliberately ignoring. Conservatism is not a cult of personality. We don't automatically agree with everything any single leader says just because we support them overall. President Trump accomplished tremendous things for our country, from appointing originalist judges to securing our border to rebuilding our economy. But that doesn't mean every conservative agrees with every statement he's ever made. The Federalist Society has been instrumental in identifying and promoting qualified conservative judges for decades. They've helped ensure that we have judges who understand that their job is to interpret the law, not to impose their personal political views. When Trump criticized the organization, many of us disagreed with that criticism while still supporting his overall presidency. This is called independent thinking, something Democrats seem incapable of understanding. Meredith handled this attack exactly right. As a judicial nominee, it would have been inappropriate for him to wade into political controversies or to criticize a former president. His job, if confirmed, will be to apply the law fairly and impartially, regardless of which political party appointed him or which political figures have opinions about the organizations he belongs to. This brings us to a crucial point about judicial philosophy that every American needs to understand. When Democrats question nominees, they're looking for assurances that the nominee will advance progressive policy goals from the bench. They want judges who will find constitutional rights that don't exist in the text, who will ignore the original meaning of constitutional provisions, and who will essentially function as superlegislators in robes. Conservative nominees like Meredith represent a completely different approach. They believe judges should be umpires who call balls and strikes according to the established rules, not players who try to change the game to achieve their preferred outcomes. This is why Meredith emphasized that his job would be to set aside his personal beliefs and follow what the law commands. The exchange about landmark Supreme Court cases is particularly revealing. Blumenthal asked about Brown versus Board of Education, Loving versus Virginia, and Obergefell versus Hodges. Notice the pattern here. He starts with cases that virtually no one disputes, like Brown, which ended racial segregation in schools, and Loving, which struck down bans on interracial marriage. These are cases where the constitutional principles are clear and the precedents are firmly established. But then he tried to put Obergefell, the case that redefined marriage, in the same category. This is a deliberate trap. Obergefell is a much more recent decision that many legal scholars, including some who support same-sex marriage as a policy matter, have criticized for its weak constitutional reasoning. The case essentially created a new constitutional right out of whole cloth rather than interpreting existing constitutional text. Meredith's response was perfect. He affirmed the well-established precedents like Brown and Loving while appropriately declining to grade more controversial Supreme Court decisions. This shows exactly the kind of judicial temperament we want: respect for genuine constitutional principles and settled law, combined with appropriate humility about the judicial role. This leads us to the broader issue of how Democrats have weaponized the confirmation process. They're not interested in whether nominees are qualified, whether they understand the law, or whether they have the temperament to be fair judges. They only care about whether nominees will advance their political agenda from the bench. Look at how they treated Brett Kavanaugh with completely unsubstantiated allegations. Look at how they attacked Amy Coney Barrett for her religious faith and her large family. Look at how they're now attacking anyone associated with the Federalist Society. This is not about ensuring judicial quality. This is about maintaining their ability to achieve through the courts what they can't achieve through elections. The attack on the Federalist Society is particularly insidious because it represents an attack on legal education and intellectual development. The Federalist Society doesn't tell its members how to rule on cases. It provides a forum for discussing constitutional principles and legal philosophy. It sponsors debates, hosts speakers with different viewpoints, and encourages rigorous thinking about the law. Many of our finest judges and legal scholars have been associated with the Federalist Society, including Justices Scalia, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. These are jurists who have demonstrated intellectual rigor, respect for constitutional text, and commitment to the rule of law. Attacking their professional associations is really attacking the principles they represent. This brings us to the reproductive rights questioning. Blumenthal made a predetermined assumption about Meredith's views based on his conservative background, and then asked whether he could be fair and impartial. This question reveals the Democrats' fundamental misunderstanding of conservative judicial philosophy. Conservative judges don't impose their personal views on abortion or any other issue. They interpret the Constitution and apply the law as written. The Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade didn't ban abortion. It returned the question to the democratic process where it belongs according to our constitutional system. Conservative judges understand that their personal policy preferences are irrelevant to their judicial duties. Contrast this with liberal judges who routinely impose their policy preferences from the bench. They find constitutional rights that don't exist in the text, they ignore constitutional provisions they don't like, and they essentially function as philosopher kings imposing their vision of social justice on the rest of us. The irony of Blumenthal's questioning is that he's essentially arguing that only judges who agree with his political views can be trusted to be fair and impartial. This is projection of the highest order. He assumes that conservative judges will do what liberal judges actually do: let their personal politics override their judicial duties. What we saw in this hearing is a microcosm of the larger battle for the soul of our constitutional system. On one side, you have originalists like Meredith who believe the Constitution means what it says, and that judges should interpret law rather than make it. On the other side, you have progressives like Blumenthal who view the Constitution as a living document that should evolve to match their current policy preferences. This isn't just an academic debate. The future of our republic depends on having judges who understand their proper role in our constitutional system. When judges start making law instead of interpreting it, we no longer have a government of laws. We have a government of men in robes who aren't accountable to the people. The Federalist Society exists to promote the principles that made America great: limited government, separation of powers, and judicial restraint. These aren't partisan political positions. They're the foundation of our constitutional order. The fact that Democrats now view these principles as partisan tells you everything you need to know about how far left they've moved. We need judges like Chad Meredith who understand that their job is to follow the law, not to implement their personal policy agenda. We need judges who respect the text of the Constitution, who understand the original meaning of its provisions, and who have the humility to recognize the limits of judicial power. The confirmation process has become a battleground because the stakes are so high. Every judicial appointment is an opportunity to either restore constitutional governance or to further entrench judicial activism. Every nominee faces a choice. Will they commit to following the law as written, or will they promise to advance progressive policy goals from the bench? Meredith chose correctly. He committed to setting aside his personal beliefs and following what the law commands. He showed appropriate respect for established precedent while maintaining appropriate judicial humility about controversial decisions. He demonstrated exactly the temperament we want in our federal judges. This hearing also reveals the importance of supporting organizations like the Federalist Society that promote constitutional principles and develop the next generation of conservative legal minds. These organizations are under constant attack from the left precisely because they're so effective at promoting constitutional governance. We need to remember that the legal profession has been dominated by liberal ideology for decades. Law schools teach progressive theories of constitutional interpretation, legal journals promote activist judicial theories, and the legal establishment generally supports the idea that judges should be social engineers rather than impartial arbiters. The Federalist Society provides a crucial counterbalance to this liberal orthodoxy. It gives conservative law students and lawyers intellectual community and professional support. It helps identify qualified conservative nominees for judicial positions. And it promotes serious scholarly work on constitutional interpretation and the rule of law. When Democrats attack the Federalist Society, they're really attacking intellectual diversity in the legal profession. They want a legal monoculture where everyone agrees with their progressive theories of constitutional interpretation. This would be disastrous for our constitutional system and for the rule of law itself. As we wrap up today's analysis, I want to emphasize why this matters for every American who cares about preserving our constitutional republic. The courts aren't just abstract institutions that hand down legal opinions. They make decisions that affect every aspect of our lives: our religious freedom, our economic liberty, our right to self-defense, our ability to govern ourselves through democratic processes. When we have activist judges who impose their policy preferences from a bench, we lose the ability to govern ourselves through our elected representatives. Important decisions get made by unelected judges who serve for life rather than by representatives who are accountable to the people. This is why judicial nominations are so important and why Democrats fight so hard to block conservative nominees. They know they can't win on many issues through the democratic process, so they depend on activist judges to implement their agenda. This is fundamentally anti-democratic and destructive to our constitutional system. We need to support nominees like Chad Meredith who understand the proper role of judges in our system of government. We need to defend organizations like the Federalist Society that promote constitutional principles against partisan attacks. And we need to hold senators like Richard Blumenthal accountable when they try to politicize the judicial confirmation process. The future of our constitutional republic depends on having judges who will faithfully interpret and apply the law rather than imposing their personal policy preferences. This hearing showed us the clear choice between constitutional governance and judicial activism. Let's make sure we choose wisely. That's all for today's episode of America First. If this analysis opened your eyes to what's really happening in our judicial confirmation process, hit that like button and share this video with everyone you know. Subscribe to our channel for more unfiltered analysis of the issues that matter most to our country's future. And remember, if you want to support our mission to keep constitutional principles at the forefront of American political discourse, head over to patreon.com/AmericaFirst, where your support for as low as $5 a month helps us continue bringing you the truth. Until next time, keep fighting for America first.